this draft 1.1 includes the new loan proposal, because the elimination of the sunset was pretty short. Right?
Just so you know.
Okay, oh, well, I wouldn't say anything any different. Good morning, everybody. This is Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs in the glorious state of Vermont, and it is Friday, March 1st. Pinch punch, first month, no returns. So we are celebrating March by beginning with economic development. We've done a lot on housing. Now we're going to shift to economic development. And to help launch that shift, we have our own Commissioner of Economic Development, Joe Goldstein, and we're going to begin to address S-247, the bill in which I have sponsored this, but I think a number of you joined me, to eliminate the veggie sunset. And we keep sunsetting it. Time to get rid of that sunset because it's a program that has added a lot of value. So we are, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Goldstein.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Senator Clarkson and committee members. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, just before Joan fully starts, you have in front of committee members, you have Joan's policy priorities, which lay out a bit of what her objectives are and why we've added to the bill. It's because this bill began just as the elimination of the veggie sunset. And so you have in front of you both Joan's memo and the bill, which is draft 1.1. Okay, take it away. Sorry.
I have a few slides that we'll start with so that we could frame this up and develop some context for the rationale about why we're doing what we're doing. And Joan Goldstein, Commissioner, Department of Economic Development.
No, but Sean Lawson is up there and he's.
Yeah.
So. Now.
Okay, great. If you could turn the page. Thanks. I wanted to first bring attention to some tax data. A lot of times when we talk about veggie, people ask, wait, why are we doing this? What problem are we solving? So I thought, let's start with the framework of the data that we collected. Actually, that tax collects just as what they do in terms of W-2s that are filed. And we asked them to identify how many W-2s are below $50,000, how many are between 50 and 100, and how many are over $100,000. And you could see the largest portion of that pie chart, 71%, with W-2s of 50,000 or less. To me, this is a stunning pie chart. And at $50,000, it's really hard to be self-sufficient, let alone buy a house. So I know we spent a lot of time talking about housing, and yes, there is a shortage, but there really is a question of are Vermonters making enough money? And so what are we going to do about that in terms of policies and targeting, and how do we make a difference to create more opportunities to increase that 6%, to increase that 23% to a wider number? Next page. So we want you to delve deeper into that pie chart. And it looks like nearly two-thirds of Vermonters work in occupations that don't require post-secondary anything, training or college. And so you'll see then very quickly it kind of explains why the wage level is so low. Typically, the more training, the more education, the higher the wage level. So there's a direct correlation. And and so it shouldn't be a surprise, even though it's a stunning pie chart to begin with. The next page lays out a framework of what should we be focusing on. We should be focusing on that shaded area up at the top. Those are we should focus employment growth efforts on industries paying above the living wage. Right now, there was a living wage calculated through MIT of 68,000, and you'll see most of the occupations, most are below that level. And so
just put a pin in this. We yesterday talked about the basic needs budget, which we calculate every 2 years, which creates the livable wage for Vermont. They do a lot of their work. Part of their work is based on the MIT work, just to put it in context for you. So we use a lot of this data from MIT.
We're using the same data. That's going to be one of my questions.
That is fine.
And so you'll see in the shaded section,
So it's appreciated.
Manufacturing, information technology, wholesale trade, There's professional tech services that includes lots of technology firms, finance and insurance. So these are the higher paid entities. We go to the next page. The other element that was brought out, and again, some of this work was completed by Guidehouse. We worked with them last year to study a number of things,
Can you
veggie being one
remind
of them.
all what Guidehouse?
Guidehouse is a management consultancy, as we call it. It works primarily with government, and they originally came to the state to decipher ARPA and all the things that could be done with ARPA. However, they are full of PhDs and economists and whatnot. So we utilize them to do a little bit deeper dive so that we could get this outside view. So when, again, explaining what is Vermont's economy, our economy is primarily sustained by local sectors. What do we mean by local? It's government, healthcare, education, social services. All great laudable goals, laudable professions, but it's not growing. It doesn't grow the economy. And so you'll see that the other section, I don't know what color it is, the light green, are what we call the tradable sectors. These are the sectors that export their product or service and bring dollars into the state that otherwise wouldn't be there. And that's what we want to focus on. That is why that's what the consultant is basically saying next page. That, the tradable sectors are the tide that lifts the boats because you're getting the outside capital, it comes in, circulates amongst the local economy, and we're creating growth in that way.
Grow our tradable sectors.
Right. So when we get to the recommendations pages, now these are very busy pages, but I'll point out a few things. Once the consultant said to us, well, you should focus on tradable sectors. And we said, well, veggie, actually, you can't get a veggie in a limited local sector. You do need to be export driven. So we felt like, okay, they're telling us something that we already know, but they're saying, growing businesses in tradable sectors and reducing barriers to business growth can increase economic activity. Okay, that's what we want to do. That's not just a goal of veggie and the ACCD. We looked at all the regional sets that are developed or being developed all around the state. And each of their goals is business development and job creation, cultivating business growth, and innovation, business environment, expand our business infrastructure. So we know that veggie is aligned with the regional sets programs, right? We need to create business growth. We need to create opportunities for Vermonters. In the next slide. In addition, they looked at the neighboring states to see, where do we stack up? Again, a very busy slide. What you'll note on the Vermont Growth
Busy
Center.
and unreadable.
Well,
We
I'll
can
read-
read it
I'll-
because it's on our website.
I'll read it. I'll read the most important points here. That when you look at the third column and fourth column, you'll see that veggie does an accumulative impact as written in statute, how we're supposed to report on this. So over 12 years, there's been $30.6 million spent. What that means is it's not just the people who were authorized. That is the actual people who submitted their claims and they got paid. So over 12 years, that's about 2.5 million, 2.4 million, somewhere around there a year that we're spending. And again, in the 12 years, 8,400 jobs created, $1 billion in private investment, 132 applications for consideration. So again, that has to be divided by 12. When you look at our colleagues from Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Maine, spending a lot more, right? Massachusetts, 19 million, okay, they're large, they're much more large as. Rhode Island, 14 million over 2 years. And Maine, 13 million in 1 year. So multiples of what our spend is. And also as a result, multiples of the outcomes. So we're spending very limited amount of money. And if we wanted to do better, the next page talks about an entire literature review that they did across the nation. And when they reviewed best in class, on the left-hand side, we'll see the leading practices. Target firms with high multipliers, tradable sectors, firms that pay a higher wage premium, we do have that wage requirement. Provide upfront incentives, we do not do. Avoid cutting expenditures to finance incentives, we don't do that. And align incentives with program goals, right? The goal is bring up the rate of pay, create jobs, create business establishments. So that one thing, provide upfront incentives, let's go to the next page and we get to what our veggie proposal is. We came up with the idea to add a forgivable loan, and there's a little bit of history to this. This is not new news that businesses want upfront incentives. probably in 2019, we came to the legislature with that idea based on a previous study. And I think it was in your committee, Senator Cummings, that someone said, well, do you underwrite? And we were like, no, we don't underwrite. So then we brought in Vito.
Senator Brock.
It might have been Senator Brock or.
That's a Senator Brock kind of
Yeah.
question.
So we thought, it made us think, and we went back to the drawing board and we came back the following year with a proposal to do, at the time, I think we called it a convertible loan. And that was during the 2020 session. And I think people liked it. So far, it was getting good. And then.
It got a good launch
And
here.
then COVID came and blew up everything. And so we were otherwise occupied by all sorts of things that had nothing to do with veggie. And so we brought this back. We dusted it off and thought, let's add an option to the program. Not necessarily change all the requirements, but just add an option that provides the upfront payment. But VITA does the underwriting. And the loan would be forgiven if they meet the targets that they set out, and they said they're gonna meet these targets. If they don't meet the targets, they have a loan with VITA that they have to pay back with the loan agreement. The appropriation that we're asking for is $350,000 to help defray any loan losses that VITA may incur based on the fact that they may be lending to a little bit higher risk profile. Let's say it's a tech company that doesn't have much fixed assets to secure as collateral. So that's the number we reached, and we thought, let's give that a shot, and also to eliminate the sunset. So I just wanted to give that background, and
Is the 350,000 in the governor's budget?
yes, 350,000 is what we asked originally in the governor's budget. And that is an appropriation not to do the lending. VITA would do the lending as they normally do, go out into the market, borrow, and then re-lend. This is just to assuage concern about any loan loss reserves that may occur as a result of them lending to these small, and this would be available only for small businesses less than 50 employees. Because, they've been critiqued that small businesses can't do all this and they don't know, how much time they may not have a finance director or CFO to fill this out.
But a small business is going to meet that target of paying over $50,000 a year to employees.
So, the wage requirement on veggie is 160% of minimum wage, right? And
So they would have to do that.
they still have to meet those qualifications, that we're not easing up on any of the other qualifications. We are reducing the projection though from 5 years to 3 years, just because it's really not practical for a business to project 5 years, how many people are gonna hire in 5 years. The environment changes so quickly, and 3 years is a much more palatable. And the other way to look at it is it puts money to work faster for the state. They hire people faster, they could put the capital investment to work.
Any questions at the moment? I have one question just before we go further, which is how many of our veggie contracts are not fulfilled? How many businesses that we enter into don't actually fulfill their contract?
I think it's around 50%
Yeah.
rescission rate. I think it's around 50%. In other
That's
words,
what I vaguely remember.
there's like an amount authorized, and then after several years, something happens and they don't meet their targets. So,
So it's about 50% do and 50% don't.
yeah,
Yeah, I
And
can
there's
look,
maybe some growth, but not full growth.
right,
exactly. Like it's very precise. Like if they're off the target by one head count, they don't get the fund, but they do have a 2-year grace period. So this does go on, and we go back and check. Actually, it's tax that does all the verification, but yeah, it's about 50%. We can get the precise number. I know that
yeah,
I'm looking at Jessica Harleman, and just
We shall chat in a sec. And, okay, so maybe I'll save that question. I just wanted to point out that our contribution to VEPSI and the veggie efforts is our own Senator Wendy Harrison, who is our new member on VEPSI and replacing Cheryl Hooker, who I think was our member through, and it's. And we missed you.
and Tom Chittenden.
Senator Chin.
Oh, and
Oh, we
Tom,
did too?
Tom followed,
No,
for Cheryl.
Senator Hooker.
Yeah, okay.
So it's great that you were there, and that's
Yes,
where she was
no, it was a
yesterday.
great meeting, and I got a preview of the slides, which was really nice.
Oh, good.
Um,
You have to see him at least 3 times. before.
No, I know, and can I just say something about
Sure.
the amount that we spend and the jobs? I was curious about it.
dollars per job created. So I know it's a very general number, but Vermont is very economical because what I
Yeah,
got is $3,600, a little bit more than that per job, Vermont,
how much?
36.35, but
3,600 per job.
no, $3,635 per job. And that's the 12 years
12 years.
and the 8,400 jobs. And then in Massachusetts, there's two different categories. There's the new jobs and then the jobs that would be retained. So the new jobs is $14,454 per job. When you total those to all the jobs, to both categories, it's closer to us, but still not as good. It's 4,938. And then the main one was, the other one was something that I couldn't, I guess it didn't have jobs. That's why I couldn't do it. But
Right, the number, yeah.
that was $11,139 a job.
Is
So,
that tax revenue per job?
no, that's what we
That's the amount
spent.
spent.
So that's what it
Tax dollars.
That's what it cost in tax dollars in order to get that job.
Correct.
Right.
And of course, I'll let you finish it.
No,
Yeah,
I'm not commenting on the outcome.
Yeah.
But I'm praising Vermont
Mhm.
for being frugal, which is one of the challenges that we had, is what I
Yeah.
heard yesterday. But that's a good thing. And now I'm thinking that 50% is probably one of the reasons that's a lower cost per job. And that we should look at the data more too, because there's just some really good information.
So, and just to tag on to that 50% question, which is, so I just wanted to stay on that for one sec, which is, anyway, sorry, Randy. I just totally forgot my train of thought. Randy, go for it.
What, to me, is really important is what's the outcome? In other words, we got jobs, but what did it add to Vermont? What did it add to, for example, the tax revenue that we get? So we've made an investment, but we're looking at what's the return on investment. The return on investment, as far as the state is concerned, particularly in terms of dealing with appropriations, I want $350,000 for the program. What am I going to get? Is it going to reduce costs? Is it going to increase taxes? And it's being able to communicate that number that, it's not just how many jobs, but what are those jobs going to bring to Vermont? And it may be additional GDP, it may be additional tax revenue, it may be additional kids to the schools. It may be, those are the real outcomes. And they're much easier for people who aren't deeply involved in these calculations to be able to see and understand. To spend that $350,000, we estimate that we're going to get $14,175 in new tax revenue that we would not otherwise have gotten within the next X number. That is understandable. Now, again, those are economic progressions, and we know that they aren't entirely going to be right on the money, but they are things that you can then go back and measure and say, did we in fact achieve what we thought we could? And we've realized that economists aren't licensed, so gonna get anything that's really accurate.
I bet we have some answers to those good questions.
Well, I guess, the initial award was based on 80% of the net fiscal impact that's projected as part of the modeling.
And the net fiscal impact includes a lot of
Includes
things.
all
Randy
the,
just
gives all kinds of assumptions about how many people end up buying cars, or
Right.
houses, or what have you, so.
But to be able to communicate
Yeah,
that successfully, not just to the public, but also to the appropriations committee, I think is critically
No, that's
important,
part of
getting
making
that
our
$350
case.
approved.
$1,000 is $35,000.
And then kind of just follow so the 350 is essentially like a safety.
it's right, it's loan.
So it may not even,
It may not be tapped into.
Like putting down that money for your hotel room too.
right.
Right.
Hotel
So
for your-
if it doesn't get spent, does it roll over to the next year?
Yeah, I think so. It
Stays
doesn't come to us, it would go to
It would
the.
stay
So-
with veggie. I mean, with
Yeah.
Right, so it might actually be helpful for multiple years.
Yes,
And,
that's correct.
So we could ask for less for the first year.
no, I wasn't even saying that. I was just saying we shouldn't consider it as money that will definitely be expended.
Right.
It's a potential
Yeah,
expense.
I'm,
What you want to be considering, as this is an investment that we believe, and we've got a history to demonstrate that will produce a return on investment that would be positive as opposed to a cost, which is negative.
Well, what do we project as our return on investment for veggie?
Well, again, the $30 million, the $30 million that we spent over 12 years, right?
Right.
Is adding up each year, we're spending 2.3. And when we spend that, it's a fifth of what that company earned in incentive. And the incentive is 80% of what the net fiscal impact is to the state. So it takes all of those assumptions that you're at the revenue side. Then there's a model that CAR run through that for each additional employee, it costs the state. That's again, all based on assumptions. So I don't know if that's.
But presumably after the fact, go back and test the assumption, did you get what you thought you were gonna get?
We do not test the assumption. What happens is tax verifies that the targets that gone into the model
Mhm.
are met. And if the targets are met, the entity gets paid. They're not going back to check and
Yeah.
see, did this employee buy a car? Did they buy a hat? Like, I don't know.
But I
Tax, we can't do
I think
that
what Randy is
necessarily.
hoping for, and we can
Is a
hopefully
number.
get this by the time we get to approach, is $30 million got us, we know, 8,400 jobs, which added X amount to the tax rolls, which, you know, sent more kids to school, which,
Right.
you know, whatever.
but that's what we can't, we're saying that, but our school population is declining.
They would have
And
declined much more, we'd have gotten that.
that's true,
It's part of
maybe,
the argument, but nonetheless, there ought to be a methodology
yeah.
employed that tell you, did you get what you think you were gonna get out of it? And that tells you whether the model is in fact accurate. Now, that's not gonna be done on, tomorrow.
In a day, right?
But
That's a whole different
that's what's really
exercise.
important with all of these things that we do in terms of economic projections,
Yeah,
is determine, did we in fact achieve what we thought we were gonna achieve?
Yeah.
How much it leverages, like, but it's not just the 50% that meet their goal target, it's also those other jobs that are growing. So we know a large number of jobs that's growing.
Right, we haven't even counted the people who didn't, even though it's been rescinded, we didn't spend any money on, but they still grew.
But they still grew their jobs.
So you would need to do a complete analysis through tax records on the jobs that were created. I mean, I don't know, I've actually talked about that, I don't know.
Economists can take
do it,
that
but-
and perhaps
Mhm.
add at least a degree of precision based on facts without going to look at
Yeah.
each and every individual tax record.
So
I don't think you necessarily have to go to that extent.
it would be great if we ever got a grant or if Guidehouse or somebody could do that. But I think anecdotally, Randy, you'll get a good sense from some of the businesses today about the increase in the income for people. Where if those people have stayed, if those businesses have stayed. I mean, so some of it, we'll get a lot of anecdotal information, I think, today.
The thing that disturbs me, when I first moved here, almost 50 years ago, I remember hearing the one economic plus that Vermont had was our workforce was good and cheap. And we're still looking
We're still
for
changing.
all of this. I want to see our average wage going up. And because if we're putting in all these well-paying jobs, it should float the wage up. And
So,
I'm not sure, what was our average wage?
The average
5
wage
years ago.
in our veggie report, I think was like 68,000. Around that number, and whereas the average for the state was much more below, so it was like, looked like it was a good $10,000 more than the average wage.
Okay, but
the average household was about just under 60.
So we're talking about wage, it's the individual.
Individuals.
Yeah.
We can look.
Yeah, so we
that
can
up.
ask someone to give us that history.
yeah, I would
The
like,
labor department, maybe.
yeah, because the wages should.
That would be good to
going
know.
up.
But we do know, basically, that Vermont underpays about 20%.
Yes,
Again, it depends on the,
Regionally, about 20%.
when you look back at the slide that has where people are working,
Yes, at the beginning,
you know, it makes sense because you have an enormous amount of people working in
service sector.
agriculture, retail trade, you know, those are lower paying professionals, right?
But if are they lower paid, they're lower paid, but are they lower paid than New Hampshire
Yeah,
or Maine? I mean, that's
that's the data we've had from Matt Berowitz in the
Yes.
past, which is that we underpay.
I just go by the McDonald's signs when I drive through here in New Hampshire and Maine. And I'd say we're offering maybe $1 or $2 less.
Your drive-throughs are very helpful on your perspective on all of this.
I
And
try and
tours.
learn the world.
Yeah. So what else would you like us to see, my dear?
I don't wanna, we have a full,
We do.
um,
So we're gonna pass it off now to Jessica to
Oh.
finish the slide deck.
No.
I think the slide deck is pretty much finished.
Oh, it's
Clear.
slide
It's
deck.
very small.
Would you like to
give
just
you-
talk about eliminating the sunset?
Sure. Yeah,
Oh,
So
the
then-
big piece that started us in this discussion.
so each year, I guess the question is this, is there a need to have the sunset on a program that's been in existence for 12 years, created jobs, not a lot of money per job, created private investment, has lots of, we're prudent. We have a lot of, every single claim is audited by the tax department. I don't know of another program that has every single claim, every single disbursement audited. Do we want to keep coming back to the drawing board to decide whether or not we need to accept this program? And so the idea behind eliminating the sunset is that we don't have to do that. We can just spend our time serving the businesses, reporting out the ROI, getting to work. That's really the impetus.
So, yes, and it's one of our most important job creation job.
It's the only incentive for private.
That we do through the state.
Yeah.
There's another statistic to go to Randy's data, when you say created private investment, that would be great if we could correlate the 30 million we've spent on the amount that the company's invested.
It says $1 billion. We had $1 billion over the last 12 years. It's on the slide.
Okay,
And our veggie reports usually point out exactly the wage, the average wage, the amount of private investment, the amount of jobs.
so
all of it
that's,
is-
so there's a good one right there, right? Okay, so thank you, Joan. Any other questions for Joan? Because she'll be here, I hope, until we adjourn.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think next on deck is, well, Rick, do we want to just quickly,
It'll be quick, yeah. I mean,
okay,
Yeah.
if you would like to just quickly show the bill, and then Jessica will we'll pivot to you.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Because you had Joan gave us the big picture, now we're gonna show you what we've got in front of us to pass before hopefully before Friday the 15th. Or some version.
all right, good morning, Rick Sagal, legislative council. This is gonna be very, very brief. So S 247 really is just amending session law that's been amended several times. This is the veggie sunset that the commissioner referenced. So what has been done in 247 is a total repeal of the sunset. It is currently set to sunset veggie on January 1st, 2025. So this would totally remove it. It would not kick the can down the curb. It would totally remove the sunset.
Oh.
And that is it.
That was, that was,
I should have talked slow. Make myself more.
What happens if this bill doesn't make it through? Veggie's gonna sunset before we get back here.
correct.
And there's still an element in this building that considers anything given to business as corporate welfare. And before we take that risk, I'd like to make sure we've got the votes to get it through, because I don't want Veggie to die 2 weeks before we get back here. If this bill doesn't go through, it doesn't make it through here in the next,
Yes, you're right, we
then
need,
Veggie will be dead before we get back.
because I don't think I have, it's not been taken up in the house, this is not,
House did take it up, but they're now on H10, which pushes the sunset to next year, to 26.
H10, which I testified to earlier this week in Ways and Means, has other changes too, but it will also
To Anne's Soto Voce comment just now, I do think that that is where we are and what we need to end. This is a program that we are in large measure very proud of and has created jobs, has created a large amount of private investment. And I think it's time for us to embrace it as one of our primary job creation, our only job creation program with our own state dollars. And we have lots of other things that we do to help. But this is really such an important program that I think we need to just embrace it fully and own it. Basically getting rid of the sunset. We can always, I mean, with legislators now, we can always change things, but I think it's time for us to eliminate the sunset. And I think to go to your point, we certainly can do that work of getting a strong support in our body. We have, the House is a different thing.
I think it probably wouldn't be the first time that we put a 1-year extension on something like miscellaneous tax the last day of the session.
But we're better than the federal government putting a month or 2 months on the budget.
Yes, but I just think we should be aware of that risk.
It is a risk, and it sounds like the House has backup. But I think that I think it's time for us to invest, to really invest fully in this program, which has brought us so many benefits.
So if I may, one clarification,
Yeah,
Senator
and so-
Cummings.
Yeah, and I just want to say that what you have in front of you also, you have the original bill, but you also have the draft with the language that Rick has taken the time to draft on the loan forgiveness program that Joe
Each senator, right, and that is draft not yet completed, so I'm not comfortable walking through that. That's just-
No, I agree. We need to discuss it and see how we
Yeah.
can.
But yeah, you can certainly look at that language.
That's why I had everybody, and that's why it's in front of everybody.
So veggie would not die necessarily on January 1st, 2025. They wouldn't be able to process any new applications. So current, I don't know if you call them contracts or awards with businesses would remain and would be fulfilled. However,
Okay,
new contracts, applications would not be accepted. Just wanted to
no,
clarify.
because veggie wouldn't exist in law at that point, so they couldn't,
No, that's not my understanding.
okay.
My understanding is that, based on this, the way this wording, is that it would just start the death of veggie. It would not be able to take new business, new applications. So it's applications currently already approved would be
Okay,
completed,
yeah,
based on this language.
It's the beginning of
Yes.
its demise. Right. So we have our work cut out for us. That's part of our job, and we need more data to support Randy's questions as we try and sell its future. But it sells itself, and we should be able to get enough, some additional data for us to further sell that. Thank you, Rick.
You're welcome.
I think, actually, if you want to be liberated, you have other pressing.
I can stay
You're
here
welcome
if
to
you,
stay. Love to
I
have you.
may watch online and then work at my desk if you don't mind.
That would be great.
All right. Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Jessica, welcome.
Welcome. How are you?
Jessica, welcome. It's great to have you for your first time here in front of Senate Economic.
Yes, it's nice to be here in person.
Let's introduce ourselves, and then if you'd introduce yourself for the record. Anne.
I mean, Senator Cummings, I serve here and I chair the finance committee.
Allison Clarkson, vice chair of this committee. Our chair has departed, and she'll be back on the 12th. I'm vice chair, and I'm also the majority leader in the Senate.
I'm Randy Brock, I represent Franklin County, part of Grand Isle County, and I'm the Senate minority here.
Okay. And I forgot to say Windsor County. Right.
And I'm Washington.
And Washington.
And we have met, and I'm with the county right now. To see you again.
So I'm Jessica Hartleben. I am the new executive director of VEPSI as of January 1st. Prior to that, I was the deputy staff attorney. So I did appear here remotely, working on ARPA related issues. For the CRRP program, the CIP program. I worked on the BGAP program, did some brownfield work related to the general funds that were appropriated.
We appropriated a lot of money in the
Yeah.
last 4 years.
Yes.
Thank you for your help getting it out the door.
So my primary responsibility from 2021 until January was working on the ARPA related programs for DED. So following the US Treasury final rule and also making sure that we were in compliance with the state statutes, Act 74 and Act 183 and 185. So I have familiarity with lots of businesses that have experienced loss either through COVID or flooding, and have reviewed a lot of applications over the last 3 years. So I've seen a lot of balance sheets, a lot of tax returns, needs that small businesses in Vermont need in terms of their capital investment and their ability to grow. And capital is the primary driver of that. So when DED was proposing this forgivable loan program, it seemed like it would be a good fit for small businesses. Small businesses seem to be the large driver of the economy in Vermont. That's been my experience in looking at the CIP applications, the CRRP applications.
Just remind us all for,
CIP is Capital Improvement Program, and CRRP was sort of the program that amended the Capital Improvement Program through our '93.
okay.
So round 2.0 called the Community Recovery and Reinvestment Program. And then BGAP was the flood recovery program from the floods of this past July. So,
Wendy was here for BGAP, but not for the others.
right, yes,
Important.
Good for the public, and thank you.
yeah.
It's a very good experience, actually, to
Yeah.
have for this job.
Yeah, so that work has really informed sort of the business side, but in my work as a DED staff attorney, I did not do a lot of TIF and veggie work necessarily. So my 60 days into this role has been spent in doing a lot of reading, and we actually are doing all of the annual reporting now for the TIF districts. So I've got familiar with the 9 TIF districts recently.
Good.
So it's very exciting.
Well, it's great to have you.
Thanks.
You sound like you have a really great foundation to take over this job. And tell us today what you would like us to know about this proposal.
I
Or
think,
how would you like to underscore it, or are you just wanting to meet us and share?
yeah, I'm happy to provide answers to some of the questions that you posed to Commissioner Goldstein. So I reviewed the DEPSI's program report for 2023,
Right.
which I'm happy to, send around again, but that does have a lot of the data, specifically the wage data that you were inquiring about. And so for 2021, the qualifying wage, 60% of the qualifying wage would have been 39,104. 40% would have been 34,216. The anticipated average wage based on the veggie claims,
You mean the anticipated growth.
the growth was, no, the wage, the average wage, anticipated average wage was 78,462.
Well, that's what I mean by the growth.
Yes,
Are you actually expecting people, that's almost doubling their job, their earning?
that would be what veggie would have, the wages that the veggie recipients would have received. Yes,
So that's almost doubling the growth of their salary.
yes,
So that's, I think, in lay terms, that's what we need to be selling.
yep. The actual wage ended up being 64,572. Still, I think, and then in terms of the target new capital investment, which I was stunned by and makes sense given my work in CRRP and CIP, the 2020 total for capital investment, the target was 5.4 million, and we actually made 14.1 million in capital investment in
Let me ask you
2020.
a question regarding the wages. The wage numbers that you quote, are they solely for the jobs that are created as opposed to the jobs of the enterprise as a whole,
Yes,
just for the jobs that we create?
I believe so. Now, I did not prepare this annual report, but it's the class that it's, the number says the veggie application year class. And I'm looking at the 2021 application year. So I can get a
Okay,
more
I mean,
refined
important just to-
answer.
to, You know,
Sure.
clarify that.
for sure.
And presumably those are the specific jobs, because you always say, you know, take a job unit here in Vermont as a whole, there's management, there's executives, there are others who are not gonna
Not
be aided by
included.
this program.
Right, my
It's a good
assumption,
number if that's, if what we
Yeah.
think it is.
my assumption is that because, you only receive the incentive if you pay on the jobs that are created as a result of veggie. So
Yep.
it would make sense that this data would correlate to that being the wage.
A lot of data, a lot doesn't make sense, which is what
Right.
these instructions.
I understand that,
So could you just repeat the one about the capital
Capital.
investment? I got
Yeah.
the qualifying wage was 39,000, it has to be low.
yeah,
Ish, and the hoped for wage had been 78, but the actual wage came in at 64. Even so much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And such a great growth rate.
the capital investment for 2020, the target capital investment was 5.4 million. And the actual new investment was 14.1 million.
That's great. And that was a tough year.
Yeah.
Wow, that was for the first year of COVID, and
But you have to remember that the class year also takes into consideration that, if I understand veggie correctly, and I'm still trying to understand the metric, you receive an incentive after you make the target, so you don't get the incentive
right, so this growth happened pre-20.
pre-2020, right? Right, and so that's the one benefit of the forgivable loan program,
Right,
is that you are able to get up, as I understand, 20% of your capital improvement project costs paid for upfront, which very
which is so
helpful.
helpful.
In looking at the projects that we did in CRP and CIP, that money was necessary to move projects forward. Or to use that capital to leverage other capital, to make the projects go forward.
So that'll be the big difference and improvement is that under the forgivable loan, they'll get their money upfront. And they won't then, and if they fail to reach their targets, then the money is either returned or they
The
pay it
money's
over time. As
converted.
opposed to getting the money after they meet their targets, which is a big improvement.
Right, and as I understand, and I've had one conversation with tax, is that sometimes it can take up to 18 months to get your incentive from your previous year, because they have to verify,
Takes time.
and it takes time, to
Yeah.
do that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just trying to figure out, you've got a forgivable loan.
Mm.
Veggie makes the loan.
Vita.
Vita makes, that's right. Vita makes the loan, you hit your goals, and the loan is forgiven. So Vita is out $2 million, whatever the amount is. What's the funding source that keeps replenishing this?
My understanding is that the funding, Commissioner Goldstein.
Yeah, so the way it works now is that tax sends the money to the employer.
Right,
So the way it will work in Vita is that tax will send the money to Vita to repay the loan.
Tax, okay, but where's tax getting? the money?
It's part of tax expenditures. I mean, like, that's why this is never an appropriation. Like, it's
It's a
a,
tax expenditure.
right,
Which is
That's
an
still an
expenditure.
expenditure.
But don't we have
Exactly.
a,
But for those of us from finance and ways and means, that is an expenditure.
yes.
So,
Oh.
yeah.
Okay, so it's money we're not collecting
Right.
from,
Yeah, usually it gets deducted from the withholding account of the employer. Like mechanically, that's what tax.
no,
is.
that's how
Yeah.
we do it now, all right? Vita's gonna give me a loan for $2 million. I do what I'm supposed to. So that's a grant from the state, it's converted because I met the target. And so I've got $2 million that I've invested in building a building. And tax is gonna repay Vita.
Right.
Where is tax getting the money from?
My understanding is they're getting it from the withholdings that the employers pay in.
It's
To-
tied to that employer because tax is still gonna verify the payroll and the headcount,
But this is a capital improvement.
both.
Both.
So they could either do headcount improvement, payroll, they'd have to maintain payroll anyway. Tax has to verify that. If they're only doing capital investment, Vita verifies it and alerts tax that that's the case.
Okay, but if they're making a capital improvement, and this may be, I've got to build a lab
Right.
where I can hire people.
Right,
I don't know where,
You're only gonna get 20% up to $1 million.
only, all right,
So you're only gonna get 20% of your CapEx project
okay.
up to $1 million.
I need a chart.
Yeah,
I'm
a
thinking,
visual-
and saying this, and I bet it would be great to have a chart. If you
Yeah.
have a chart on the flow of the money
okay,
that's being
we could do
and
that.
the
That would be
proposed
helpful.
flow, which would be slightly different with the loan, it would be great. How many jobs on average are created per employer? Do we have that? Any?
I don't know, if we look over the last 12 years, if there are, what was it, 1,800 jobs that were created?
No, I know the number of jobs, 3,400 jobs, but how many per employer roughly is the average of new jobs created per employer?
And I think that was 132 applications that were reviewed, so,
So how
I
many?
mean, I could, we just.
Yeah, you could get that
Do
to
the
us,
math.
it would be interesting to know how many, we know 3,400 new jobs were created. On average, how many per employer? I mean, our employers, and we'll get this from Andy and Sean and
Right.
others, but it would be great to get a sense of, is a company coming to you to create 10 jobs, 5 jobs,
All over the map.
3 jobs? It's all of it.
yes, you can
Okay.
all over.
So thank you,
You're
Jessica.
very welcome.
Anything further? I think we'd like to build out our advocacy on,
Please do.
if I may speak for us.
Yeah.
And if we don't already have that report, that would be helpful. I would
Yeah.
hope that we
If you
get
would
it.
send it
It's
to
on
us,
the-
Yeah,
I probably have it, yeah.
You said
It
it
We'll
was
send
on-
it
it
again.
should be on our website,
Great,
and if it's not, it's on your website.
Yes.
On our website.
okay.
But why don't you send it
I'll
to us?
send it around.
That's the most recent one,
This is
right?
the 2023 that I
Yeah.
dropped it off last
If,
night.
if you'd be kind enough to just send it to Magali, and then we'll have it again under your name.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to do that.
Because we're trying to improve our websites by subject matter, so every year, all the things under veggie and Betsy should be.
Right. The only other thing I would say is about the annual report, this report does lay out the mandate for what we are supposed to be reporting back to the legislature.
Right,
And so if there are things that the legislature
we'd like more.
more of, or
Good
that
point.
you might wanna just look at the,
Yeah, and when this
Third
might be
page.
something that we
Yeah.
could work on together, it's just looking
there's a
at.
reporting requirement. It's on page 4 of our annual report. And we have to provide that by September of every year.
Okay.
So if there are additions, we may not collect that information, but we may be able to. It might just be a matter of
You can find it somewhere.
find it.
Yeah.
And I'm new. so-
Right, we now have
There you go.
about half an hour
Thanks.
to Jessica and Joan, thank you for teeing up our, Andy, why don't you come join us? And, then we're gonna hear from Sean Lawson and Tate, Krasner. So, Andy, welcome.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself. Sure, let's introduce ourselves.
Yes, so I'm Andy Julo. I am the Executive Director for the Lake Champlain Islands Economic Development Corporation.
Oh, you
And,
took over from Ruth?
yes, Ruth, by way of, 2 other people.
Oh,
Yes.
I didn't realize there's.
Yes, yes. Also currently serving as the president of the RBCs in Vermont.
Oh, you are?
Yes,
Ah,
yes, I'm the new Fred.
you are the
A
Fred.
younger version.
And you have a beard.
And I have a beard, not as bushy as Fred's. But yeah, I'm working on it.
No, Fred. I can't remember, he has a theatrical daughter.
Yeah. I'll be brief. I think I'm the least distinguished of all your guests this morning, so it's your time. You have some businesses, and that's really the story of Veggie. But the RDCs of Vermont would like to make just a few points here on Veggie program. First being that job creation still matters in the economy that we are in. Lawson's and OnLogic and Darn Tough and Beta. None of these even existed when I graduated from high school, and some of them were barely off the ground when my daughters graduated from high school. So this is a fast-moving landscape, and in 20 years, it's going to look completely different. But only if we actively engage with these businesses. Businesses expect to have a conversation with states before they commit to growth within it. And without Veggie, there's no one to talk back to. Construction costs have tripled since the pandemic, which just makes it all the more important to tip the scales towards growth. Yeah, that's what I've heard from Burlington.
I've heard it's going up, but I
Yeah.
haven't heard that.
No one has said to us, yeah.
That's new information.
Want me to give you some
We'll
background
verify
on that? Yeah, absolutely.
We all know it's going
Yes.
on.
Housing too.
Check.
Yeah, yes, we just did our big housing bill and no one
Yeah.
actually said it's a true.
Yeah.
Everyone knows it's going up.
Commissioner Goldstein did a great job of outlining the makeup of our workforce with a pie chart. We know unemployment is low, but when you dig in, it's the low end of that spectrum that has the most open positions. And it's really been like that since the pre-pandemic. That's a demographic issue. It's something different going on. But I think you can see from the small slivers of more moderate income that we have some.
So like clearly was in these particular areas, round and complete life.
We'd love to see Vermont graduates of colleges, universities stay here. And it's those tiers.
We put out those
Yeah.
incentives, so let's hope they.
Absolutely. And if we happen to move somebody from that lower end of the pie chart up to a middle chart and create a vacancy in the hospitality industry, I think that's probably a good problem that we have to deal with, that somebody advanced themselves and moved up the ladder. Second point we'd like to make is that all counties do benefit from Veggie. We have 8 counties that currently have active applications, but the other 6 benefit as well. This is a very small state. We have commuter counties, my own county. We have no Veggie recipients. We probably will
What
never.
county do you live in?
Grand Isle, yeah.
I know.
Are you Grand Isle?
I Grand Isle. Yep,
Because you, like Champlain, it could be, you could live maybe a number of
it's true. Yeah. From Grand Isle, and I'm probably never going to have a Veggie. Well, it's never say never, but we might not. But 73.3% of our workforce works in a county where a Veggie exists. So we're all very mobile. Some communities don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the desire to have those kind of industries in their backyard. They want to use them. They still benefit from those being next door. The argument that it's very difficult to fill out an application, and that might be suppressing small businesses from applying. I spent 2 days last week with a chicken farmer filling out a USDA application. That
Oh,
is
that,
a very difficult application. I have found ACCD applications to be much more streamlined and easier than any other grant application. It's not a Gmail account. I mean, it's still a grant. It has requirements, it still has a lot of paperwork and documentation, but much better streamlined. And if a business has difficulty, that's where we come in. And that's where Melissa comes in. We get a grant from ACCD specifically to help businesses access state programs through ACCD. Typically, we are involved at all levels of a Veggie application, and there to support them. Anyone who goes through without RDC support has chosen to do it all on their own. I think you'll hear there's some very small businesses that have successfully gotten Veggie applications in and really had no issue there. The problem is, as Commissioner Goldstein has illuminated here, is that cash flow is often an issue for small businesses.
Yeah.
They can't outlay it and expect to be reimbursed every 3 or 5 years. It's really what's holding that back. And lastly, the continuing to kind of kick the can and move that sunset is having an impact on business decisions already. They don't like instability. And one example is a business that was looking at relocating in Vermont, in central Vermont, Economic Development Corporation's territory. They were going to be, a next generation battery factory for EVs. They were looking to build a factory that would have given 1,250 jobs.
1,250 jobs and we couldn't land that?
We
Uh,
don't have 1,250 homes.
Yeah, they'd come out of the woodwork for that.
I mean, sure, there were other factors, but one was that they were advised that they couldn't guarantee that there would be incentives past May of 2023. And they did end up being in Arizona. That's what we had on the line that we lost, how many nibbles we miss because it's uncertain where we're gonna be, in a few years. It's just hard to document. Yeah, so these are some of the points that we would make. Feel it's a growth strong program and like to see the uncertainty and doubt removed from it.
Wow, any questions for Andy?
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So Tay must be on the screen.
I think
Is that,
Listed.
I mean, Sean, welcome back.
Oh.
Sean Lawson, did we lose you?
We lost
Yes,
that.
when-
Sean is back
Okay.
from his garage.
We haven't got his picture though. Yeah.
A
Who's wrong button?
Sean Lawson,
No.
welcome.
Yep.
Are you able to join us? There you are, not
Very
your garage,
good.
but actually. Well, hi, welcome. It's good to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to share my perspective on the veggie program. My name's Sean Lawson. Our company is Lawson's Finest Liquids. We're located in Waitsfield, Vermont. I'm sure many of you are familiar with both our product and our stories. And I'm a strong supporter and advocate for the veggie program. I'll give you a little bit of background. We were a veggie recipient, applied in 2017. I can verify that it was somewhat onerous to go through the process, but it really helped us get clarity on our business plan and our future. And the veggie was the catalyst for expanding the scope of our project and resulted in a much higher number of employees than we initially anticipated, which was, so we're one of the success stories for sure in the veggie program. So our
Sean-
business started, yes, go ahead. Yep.
While we're trying to develop sort of data on
Sure.
on what that growth was, how many pumps actually did you create from your veggie grant?
So let me pull up my notes here. And
Tell us.
when we started in 2008 as a mom and pop company, no employees for 8 years. We hired our first employee in 2016, and it was at that time that our production had grown enough that we were starting to expand distribution outside of Vermont and in the Northeast. And we made our plans for a big expansion in Waitsfield, which involved building a new production brewery, a tap room, a retail store. And we initially thought that we might hire between 12 and 20 people. When I learned about the veggie program and got some information about how it worked and determined sort of what could that do for us in terms of securing additional capital. It was a big capital build out. We initially were projecting between 5 and 10 million. It ended up being a $15 million investment in Waitsfield. With the veggie program incentive, we wouldn't have been able to access that full amount of capital without the incentive secured first. In the veggie application, we projected that we'd hire about 34 people over the first 3 years of our project. What ended up happening due to the success of both the build out and our business and it being a good time both for the economy and craft beer was that we ended up growing beyond our expectations. We hired over 50 employees during our first year with the new facilities built, which was in October of 2018. And by last year, 2023, we had over 80 employees. I think the strength, yeah, so it's pretty phenomenal. We didn't expect it.
When you first testified in this committee, I think you were still functioning from the garage.
It
Is
started
that
literally in it was a garage style project in the beginning.
I mean, I remember it was a garage. So every time I have a sip of sunshine, I think, wow, this is now no longer producing in a garage. So that's extraordinary growth and very exciting.
And I think what's the strength of the veggie model is that the funds are not paid out unless the taxes are paid in. So I can tell you as a participant in the program, there's a lot of number crunching that goes in each year by the tax department. We have our detailed metrics sheets that they send to us post calculation that show there's a lot of wage calculations, taxes paid in, and the incentive is not paid out unless we both met our targets that we stated in the application and hired the people and had them on the payroll. We've been able to create a number of very good jobs, livable wages, very generous benefits. We pay 90% of one of the best medical plans that you can get in the state through Blue Cross Blue Shield. We've been covering 100% of dental, life insurance, disability. So we like to think of ourselves as a great place to work. One of the strengths of our business also in terms of being an economic driver in Vermont is that we do have exported product that Joan was talking about earlier. So our beers our beers distributed all over the Northeast, bringing dollars back into Vermont and back into our economy. And as far as considering changes to veggie, I'd be a strong advocate for eliminating the sunset, keeping this program going. A shorter time frame. I know that's been discussed in terms of the incentives and the targets. Like looking at 3 years instead of 5 would be, I think, helpful for most small businesses. And the forgivable loan option, it sounds intriguing. That could be very helpful for small businesses as well.
Right. Thank you. Any questions for Sean? No.
No, it's very helpful.
It's super helpful to have, an illustration of the value of this program. So thank you so much. And,
absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before the committee. And I just say again, I think we're a great example of how an incentive program like this has really helped fuel economic growth and add jobs here in Vermont.
Great. Thank you so much for being one of the faces of veggie. Much appreciated. Thank you, Sean. And I do think of you every time the boys say, "Oh, bring me." Everyone in New York wants, lots of sip of sunshine brought down for Thanksgiving. And I just have this visual of you sitting in this chair.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you so much. Good to see you as well.
Bye-bye. Okay, Tate, are you here? Tate
Yes.
Krasner or someone else who's gonna be resonant?
Who's that?
There you
Hello.
are. Oh my God. Hi, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, it's good to have you on this glorious day. Tell us who you are and help further illustrate Veggie's value.
Absolutely. And thank you so much to Sean as well. I'm the Director of Government Programs at Resonant Link. We're based in South Burlington, and we're a wireless power company that creates wireless chargers across a range of applications, from implanted medical devices like neurostimulators and pacemakers, all the way up to industrial EVs in order to electrify warehouses and ports and freight yards. We applied...
And human beings.
Yes.
I mean, if you have, right.
Exactly. We applied for a veggie grant back in 2022, which made us eligible for up to, I believe, $878,000 to create 30 jobs over a 3-year period from 2022 to 2024. Our footprint in Vermont has grown pretty substantially over the past few years. We had 2 full-time employees in Vermont in 2020, and as of 2023, we've had 25 full-time Vermont employees.
Wow.
We're split actually between about half of us are located in Vermont and the other half are located really across the world. So we have hubs in San Francisco, Boston, and Zurich, Switzerland. And I think the other...
May I just ask, are those manufacturing hubs or sales hubs or both?
More R&D hubs with some commercial footprint as well, but our manufacturing at the moment is pretty much all done in Vermont, and we're looking to expand that footprint as well.
Great.
So I think just in terms of actual numbers and goals, our 2022 goal was 7 hires in Vermont, and we ended up hiring 8. And then in 2023, our goal was 13. We came up a tiny bit short in 2023 and created 8 jobs as well. But like Sean said, the incentive is actually, tied to the tax base that's created. So we're still trying to hold ourselves accountable to those numbers as well. I think the other thing I would mention, just from a small business perspective, is the grant is incredibly helpful for us to hire folks within Vermont, but I think it also frees us up to make other investments in the state. So increasing our manufacturing footprint as we ramp up the production of our wireless chargers here. And the other thing too is we're not only using the Veggie grant to bring people to Vermont, but also our CEO and our VP of People and Business Operations actually relocated to Burlington in 2023. So there's definitely a recruitment campaign to get folks who aren't based in Vermont to move there.
Yeah. One of our favorite programs, right, Andy? They're doing it for us. Inside thing. A favorite program that the rest of the legislature didn't love as much as we did. Bringing Vermont and bringing new Vermonters to Vermont.
Yes.
Anyway, relocated worker program.
So I think, like Sean, we're big proponents of the program and would like to see it continued. We're also definitely intrigued by the forgivable loan program. As a small business, having that cash on hand up front is always more valuable than having it be deferred. And of course, with the forgivable loan, you still have to hit those targets if you don't want to repay that loan. So that just provides small businesses with additional flexibility and also having the cash on hand, as I'm sure Sean can attest to as well, allows us to invest in capital expenditures as in addition to hiring.
Yeah, terrific. Any questions for Tate?
No, I guess maybe just about housing. Thank you very much.
Yes, we could go to our other issue, which is housing.
Yeah, so the folks who moved here, I'd be interested to know, did they move here because it's better to be, they wanted to be close to the operations? I mean, that makes sense. Did they want to move here because of aspects of Vermont that they didn't have where they were? I mean, can you talk just a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an important aspect of our application was essentially that we're a manufacturing company and an engineering company, and we could go pretty much to any place in the country, whether it's San Francisco or Boston, if we solely wanted to focus on just engineering talent and kind of the availability of the recruitment pool. But I do think the quality of life aspect was such an important decision when we decided to locate our headquarters in Vermont. We knew it was a place that would attract people and would be, a place people wanted to relocate to. So that's been a big piece of our recruitment has just been the quality of life in Vermont.
Great. That's what I was hoping.
Yeah, no, that's consistent. That is what we've learned right from the beginning as we have explored this. I'm just curious, how did you end up in Vermont? Who was the bright bulb that anchored you here?
Yeah. So our co-founders met in the labs of Dartmouth, where they were doing research on wireless power transfer. And when they decided to set up shop, none of them were from Vermont originally, actually. I think they were looking at...
But they came to the Upper Valley because of Thayer, which is great, and ended up then choosing to anchor in Vermont instead of New Hampshire, which this is big.
Yeah,
We love-
exactly.
I'm liking this president like a lot more, because as you know, so many of our Thayer graduates stay on the New Hampshire side, so it's wonderful that you guys came to Vermont.
Absolutely. And I think there was, a pull toward the Boston area just because it's where a lot of technology companies decide to set up shop. I think, to be quite honest, I think our chief technology officer really liked the outdoors, really liked the quality of life. And when it's a 2-person company or a 3-person company, you can make that decision a lot more easily. But it stuck, and we've been able to expand by more than 12-fold since 2017.
So you have how many employees now? You said you have 25?
So
No.
25 in Vermont. We have approximately 45 to 50 total employees full time.
That's great. That's terrific. Anybody else got another question? Anybody from Tate? Thank you. You tell
Thank you
us
so much.
how great we are that they
I will.
managed to get across the river. And
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tate. Okay, we have a few minutes.
I think you have one more.
Oh, Andy.
Yeah, actually, we have Newell Lessel from Chroma Technology in Bellows Falls.
Oh, we do?
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's not on my list.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I thought he'd been added to the agenda.
Oh, sorry. Newell.
That's my bad.
Oh,
No, it's not bad. It's just Friday. Newell, Newell, would you be? Oh, your keyboard is fascinating.
Yes.
There we go.
Hi, Newell. Alice,
morning.
and we were on when we introduced ourselves.
I,
Because
I
one of
was
your
not.
senators. Are you muted?
No,
I
what
don't-
did you?
think so.
Okay, there you go. Okay, great. Sorry, I just
Okay.
missed hearing. Hi, were
Right,
you
no.
on when we introduced
I was
ourselves? Okay, we're just gonna quickly introduce ourselves. We have about 10 minutes. And
Ann Cummings from Washington County District now. I am on this committee, I chair finance.
You'll on Allison Clarkson and I, I'm one of the senators from Windsor County District. I'm the vice chair of this committee and I'm the majority leader in the Senate.
And I'm Randy Brock from Franklin County and represent also part of Grand Isle County, the Senate Minority Leader.
And I'm Wendy Harrison, Wyndham County. I think we met when I was the town manager in Rockingham
Okay,
a
yes.
few years ago. So
Yeah.
happy to see you here today.
And Wendy now is also our Senate representative on the VEPSI board. So you have double impact in Wyndham now. So,
Great.
And we have a lot going on, which is good.
and you have a lot going on. So Newell, take it away. We'd love to
Sure.
hear what you have to say about the sunset and the elimination of the sunset and the veggie program and anything you want to add.
Sure. So I'm Newell LaSalle, the CEO of Chroma Technology. Thank you for giving me a chance to speak this morning. We're based in Bellows Falls, Wyndham County, and we are a manufacturer of precision thin film optical filters. And among other things, our product goes in microscopes, DNA sequencers, and pivotally PCR instruments that are used for COVID testing. And we applied for Veggie, I guess, in 2015. Our period was 2016 to 2020. It was to significantly expand our facility, double the capacity. At that point, we had outgrown the facility and were faced with either expanding on site, or our alternatives were actually acquiring a facility out of state or moving across the river into New Hampshire. And so public support was essential for doing this because the cost of the project was about a $20 million project. We would have ended up with a facility that we would have invested more in the facility than its market value would be worth. And so the Veggie program was a key piece of a larger program, including federal new markets tax credits in order to do this expansion. And so it was about our commitment for capital spend for Veggie was around $20 million. We ended up spending more like 21, 22. And the employment commitment was to add 21 employees. And in fact, we added net new employees 50, so we were about 240% of our employment target. And we create very good jobs at Chroma. We've been named the best place to work in Vermont each of the last 5 years, I believe. And so our payroll commitment was about 1.1 million. We annualized, and we actually did almost 4 million. And because we're 100% employee owned, we share our profits with our workforce. And so total payroll, including the profit sharing in that period increase, was $9 million.
Which is
So-
what it is roughly today.
That was just the increase, yes. And so that has lasted. The profit sharing goes up and down depending on how good a year we're having. Because of the pandemic, we had 2021 and our fiscal 21 and 22 were extraordinarily good years for the business. But more importantly, we were able to meet demand for these filters for COVID testing. We never would have been able to do that without having had the Veggie funds to do the expansion. And the jobs we create, as I said, we've been named the best place to work each of the last 5 years in Vermont. The jobs we created were a range of jobs from entry-level accessible to highly skilled engineers. And we're doing high-tech manufacturing in Vermont, in a rural part of Vermont. And about 60% of what we produce is exported. Everything we manufacture is made in Vermont. And so that brings a lot of money back into the state. I actually, before coming to Chroma, I actually was in economic development. And so I believe in economic development. I think done right, you can do well with it. And I feel strongly I'm in support of performance-based economic development, not just handing money out, not just smokestack chasing. So I think it's a good program.
Thank you. That's a great way of putting it. It is performance-based, and that should
allow them to keep their energy efficiency money. Part of the problem.
right. That's right. Yeah. Newell, I hate to do this to you, but we are getting, you can't hear it, but we're getting binged to go up to the Senate floor because we have an important election actually that we are gathering the House. This is incredibly helpful. Thank you for helping illustrate Veggie's value.
Sure.
Any additional comments from anybody supporting, we would love to have, if you email it to Magali, and if you send your testimony, actually all of you to Magali, that would be great to have as we report out this bill. Thank you very much. This was a great,
Great.
terrific.